senior recruiter at LifeLock, and I have been in corporate recruitment in the Phoenix area now for about 11 years. I worked at PetSmart's corporate office for 5 years, Banner Health, and their executive recruitment for about 3.5. Then West in corporate recruitment, and then they lost their contract and closed, which was sad. But then I got the job at LifeLock, and I've been there for about 1.5 years. So I say that because what I'm going to share with you is my opinion based on the experiences I've had. So hopefully you take a morsel of cool away, but just know that this is your career, and you may find different experiences, and that's okay. So what I'm saying isn't fact and proven. It comes from experience of 11 years, and I hope it does something for you, because that's really what I want to do. I'm actually going to talk about LifeLock after, if that's okay, and talk about my subject, which is resume. And I thought it would be helpful.
Down on the bottom of the E.
Awesome. So we're going to go to our applicant tracking system. So I'm sure that your school has amazing resources for you about resume. I'm sure that you guys know that you can Google anything. You can certainly Google resume templates, tips on resumes, anything you want to know, resumes do's and don'ts, resumes of whatever it may be. We can Google whatever we need to know. I don't want to discount how important those pieces are. And if you have any questions on that, please let me know once we get to that part. But I want to talk to you about what corporate recruiters like myself are doing every day. Now, the job at PetSmart I got from my dad. My dad knew a headhunter who asked a favor, blah, blah, blah. It was my first job out of school. I got that job, great. I got my job at Banner Health by submitting my resume online to their posting. I got the job at, West from an old colleague who had reached out to from a recruiter. If they were interested, said, no, I'm not, but why don't you give this gal a call? And then I got the job at LifeLock from an old colleague from West who got that job, when we were closing, and she gave me the heads up that they weren't hiring. So you see, and I don't really consider myself uber networked. Professionally, I certainly achieve for that. I'm a social person, but I'm not one of these people that does everything in groups of 15. So I'm actually kind of private and introverted in my life. So what I'm saying is, if you look at my career and see the jobs I've even gotten through networking, that's a pretty good ratio, considering I'm not a mover and shaker personally. Professionally, again, it's a little bit different. But most of the time, you will be submitting a resume online to a job posting. And you've all been to a career fair, and the employer says, what do they say? Please go to our website. Please go to our website. And it's not because they don't want to take your paper resume. It's just because we are all working in applicant tracking systems, most of us. And that is how corporate recruiters like me, who are usually the first funnel, are working. Applicant tracking systems are just as they sound. They're a database of resumes, but it's a functioning, it's a workflow database. And what I thought would be helpful is to show you ours. And I hope it opens because it won't open on my iPhone. Yay. So every day, I come into work, the biggest Starbucks will serve me, and I start my day. So these are just the jobs I'm recruiting on right now. I don't have that many right now. It's kind of a lower level. I have some that are pending approval. But these are the jobs I have. So when I get a new job, I have a job description, I meet with our hiring leader, and we talk about our strategy of recruitment. So we take care of those postings. I may go to a niche site like American Marketing Association if I have a marketing role. I may go to FEI if I have a finance executive role. Obviously, I post at LifeLock, I post at LinkedIn. So we take care of the posting first and foremost because they work for us. They work for us when we sleep. Then we have awesome websites like Indeed that are aggregates that just pull from everywhere that's posted, that are free to employers. And we rely on those postings. Sometimes times when I'm not getting the applicants I need, I source for them. So I go out and I find them. I reach out to them on LinkedIn, and I try to lure them into LifeLock. Oh good, see, I don't have any candidates for tax manager because I just posted it. So the topic of resume, the reason I bring this to you is because everything you find will be very important. Format, all that good stuff. But I want to tell you the real world. And the real world is you have recruiters like me that have lots of positions with lots of candidates, and we're going through them relatively quickly. It doesn't mean we're not looking at everything. You hear that terrible stat that floats around out there, like recruiters spend, and I don't want to say it because I can't remember, 20 seconds, 40 seconds on a resume. You're like, how can this be? How can that possibly be? It's the reality, but it's not a bad thing. So don't get my message is not to get hung up on font format, but you don't want to do things that will detract from anything. So I'm not so concerned with your font. I'm concerned with the content of your resume. But if there's a misspell that catches my eye, that's detracting, right? Now I'm focused on this misspell. If the objective says I'm really interested in seeking a position at Intel, and I'm a LifeLock recruiter, that's a bummer. It catches my eye, and it's detracting. Now, make no mistake, if it's a position that is a hard-to-find role, and you put Intel in your objective, I'm probably still going to call you, depending on the role. I personally don't get hung up on those things. I know some recruiters do. But I'm not hiring resume writers, is my point. And the whole thing about keeping your resume to one page, where most of you will be in your career, that's totally plausible, feasible, probably accurate. You don't want to make it too wordy by any means. You want it to be pertained to your professional search. But we are scrolling. That's all we do. Let me pull myself up for purposes of that. We have test ones in here. So let's say I want to look at this gal's, hopefully my resume's in there. We'll pull up my boss, he won't mind. Yeah, I promise. He does it all the time. Sorry guys, I just want to give you a real resume. Oh, it doesn't normally move like so quickly. Okay, here we go. So let's say I'm making this up, of course, for example's sake, but let's say I'm hiring an accountant. You saw I had an accountant open, junior level. I only need 2 years of experience, FYI, for when you get there. And I'm scrolling and I'm saying, okay, he's never been an accountant, he's manager, recruitment, talent acquisition leader. Guess what? I'm moving on. That doesn't mean that Scott couldn't do an awesome job at being an accountant. Maybe he could. But the reality is that there's volumes of candidates that I can actually move on and go to the people who have been accountants. So that being said, it's going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. And to her point, that being said, the trend is to hire behaviors more and more and more and more, and to teach the technical piece. So if I need an Excel guru, but I also need someone who's agile, quick to change, goes with the punches, positive, excellent at customer service, excellent at collaborating, innovation, and they're a little less on the Excel, guess what? We can teach that. We can send you to a course for Excel. You've got the right behaviors. And more, that's been the focus. There was a quote up at ASHRA, which is Arizona Health, Human Resource Health, something. And it said, 60%, you should be having 60% behaviors. So that ties into what she was sharing with you on what your transferable skills are. Those negotiation skills, those selling skills, they're all so important. And what you may be lacking in some experience, if it's a real tactical skill, they're willing to overlook that. And that happens all the time. Now that does happen more in the situation of networking and such, because you say, gosh, I know this person may be outstanding at LifeLock. They possess our values. They are currently doing distribution logistics. We don't have a distribution, we don't have a logistics department. But there might be a role that we can actually fit them into. So that, I don't know if that's helpful to you or not, but when you apply to a role, and it doesn't go into a black hole, at least it doesn't with us, I assure you we look at all of them. We come in and we open the job at least once a day, and we look at the resumes that come in, and we start to kind of narrow down and make the decision on the ones that we want to reach out to and have a phone conversation or submit to the hiring leader. And if for some reason you see on my media director I have 81 applicants, well, we have, and again, I don't want to click because the names will show up, but we had 2 final rounds of interviews yesterday. There's a good chance we're going to make a decision out of those 2 candidates. But someone may have applied tonight. We leave all jobs open until they're filled. Well, I also may get an email from the hiring leader that we're extending an offer, so I'm not calling that person that applied tonight. So that message there is never to get discouraged. If you see a position you're interested in, you're qualified for, and there's a company on your list, and you apply and you don't hear anything, it's okay. Because there's just a lot of activity going, and you never know where you're coming out in the search, and never be afraid to follow up as well. So anyway, resumes. So where you're at, when I'm looking for a media director, I'm going to, now media director is a little bit different of a title because they can be called a lot of different things. Accountant, for the most part, every company calls an accountant an accountant. So that's pretty streamlined. I can just go through those resumes relatively quickly and narrow down my pool to an accountant. And so this isn't to make you feel like, oh dear God, there's 81 people for every job. It's not the case. This one's been out there a little bit. But it's really just to let you know that almost all companies have applicant tracking systems. Most companies have some sort of recruitment source, whether they're RPOs, where they're outsourced and they're sitting in, or they're actual in-house recruiters, and they work in an applicant tracking system, and they're going through those resumes, and they're most interested in your most recent title, your education, and less about how many pages, what type of stock. And if I can also share a tip, and if you've done this, that's okay. It's good because you'll probably learn something. You'll always learn something. But there's so many amazing resources out there that you should never have to pay for someone to create your resume. It's pretty pricey, and it's not necessary. You simply Google templates and you'll find that. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions on this, just let me know. Every company I've worked at has had a different applicant tracking system, with the exception of Banner. We both use ISOMs. They're all about the same. We're also held to maintaining these records. So if I speak with someone on LinkedIn and they're awesome and they're great and I want to set them up with a hiring leader, I have to drive them to the site. Because when we do our AAP plan, when we get audited, LifeLock is federally contracted, as was Banner. They're auditing us on this database. And so that's another reason why employers will push you to the site. So it's not that they don't want to take home paper or they're not interested in seeing what you've done on paper. It's also because we want to stay in compliance as well. So don't get discouraged, but back to LifeLock. Now LifeLock is headquartered in Tempe, Arizona. We have locations in San Francisco, small office. We have our corporate communications group and our corporate development group. Those are the guys that go out and determine who's going to be the next mergers or acquisition. We have an office in Mountain View, right by LinkedIn, Google, Apple. A lot of fun to compete with those companies. I was being sarcastic. It's tough to compete with Google. They have Google bikes on campus. But we do compete with them. So we have an office there. Those are IT, engineer, our product managers. A lot of our digital marketing people are up in Mountain View. We have an office in Irvine, which is a lot of engineers as well. We own ID Analytics, which is based in San Diego. But 3/4 of our employee base is a mere 2 hours down the mountain in Phoenix, and we have all the corporate departments that you've come to expect. Finance, real estate, marketing, human resources, legal, etc. What we do is we are identity protection. We are the industry leader. We have over 3 million members. And so when you have that fraudulent Target debit card purchase and you call your bank and they give you the money back, that's not identity theft, believe it or not. What we monitor is your social security number. So that's when Some of the bigger risks are around filing taxes under someone else's social, medical fraud, medical insurance, giving someone else's information when you're pulled over, and then of course buying a car, house, or anything along those lines. ID Analytics, who is in San Diego, I don't think I mentioned that, they do credit risk assessment for corporations. And they really differentiate us in the marketplace, which is cool. Because some of our competitors are customers of ID Analytics because they have a technology patent and so forth. We are growing 25 to 30% a year. We just came off of 37 straight quarters of growth. We're in a very, very small population of companies. What that means to you is as you look to start and build your career, I hope you'll keep us in mind. We are a high-tech company and based in Phoenix, as I said, which there's not a lot of high-tech headquarters down there. There's just some stats here on identity fraud, which is huge. And I just attended the SHRM conference, which is Society of Human Resources, and attended an identity protection breakout. More than anything, because I was curious as to what they wanted to say to a room full of HR professionals, and it was an attorney who specialized in risk. And basically the takeaway was this was becoming the #1 employee offered volunteer benefit. Volunteer meaning that the employer may or may not subsidize like pet insurance, but it's something they offer their employees. And the angle for that, for the employer benefit, is that there's so much lost productivity. But again, this is just telling what you do. Another differentiator is that we restore, but I'm not trying to get numbers here tonight. I'm telling you about back to the behaviors. When I said that we're trying to hire on those. So these are our values. So be the best, act with respect, satisfy the customer, inspire innovation, and commit to collaborate. And that's the train that is LifeLock. And so you may be the best software engineer in the world, but if you're suffering in any of these areas, it may work short term, but it's not going to work long term. So back to those soft skills and what you bring to the table beyond just your degree and your work experience. It's just as important. Because we've seen it all the time, where you hire someone who's technically sound, or maybe you've worked with someone, or maybe in your groups, where they're doing the job fine, but their attitude stinks. Or they're not good with teamwork, they're not good with the customers, and those things are just as important. I did want to talk about our curse at LifeLock, and they are, and you know the companies I've worked at now, so again, keep that in mind. But they are by far the best benefits package I've ever had exposure to. All levels of the organization, and we do have a call center, which is called Member Services, would get 4 weeks of PTO a year, 8 holidays, 3 days off to do volunteer work, day 1 401k matching, which is dollar for dollar matching, up to 6% with immediate investment, which is unheard of. Everyone gets restricted stock units, and most position gets stock options, and most get bonus incentives as well, and day 1 benefits. So this is something I like to share because I kind of keep intel when I'm talking to candidates, especially at other high-tech companies, to just see how do we compare in that. And I've only found one company that exceeded our 401k, so it was pretty impressive. So anyway, LifeLock jobs, you would know how to get there if you wanted to apply. But I hope I've given you something with the resume on, try to think of your audience when you're creating it. And the audience is usually a corporate recruiter versus the hiring leader. A good recruiter has really taken the time to find out what their hiring leader needs to do, or what they're looking for beyond just the job description, the day-to-day, the challenges, whatever it may be. And think of that when you're crafting your resume, and put your energy and your resources into the content, and try not to get too hung up on those other pieces. And I think that's it. And then we'll make the questions at the end.